Being too friendly can lead to being taken for granted. One of the most common yet overlooked consequences of being too friendly. That people begin to take you for granted. At first, your warmth, willingness to help, and constant availability may be appreciated, even praised. But over time, that same openness can become expected rather than valued. People might stop saying, "Thank you," stop asking if you're available before demanding your time, and start assuming that you'll always agree or comply. The things you once did out of kindness become duties in their eyes. This shift happens subtly. You may notice that the favors you offer turn into obligation. Instead of appreciating your generosity, others begin to feel entitled to it. The same colleagues who once admired your helpfulness now consistently offload extra work on you. Friends may always rely on you to make the effort in the relationship, but rarely reciprocate when you're the one in need. Even strangers might sense your willingness to please and exploit it, pressing you into commitments you never truly agreed to. Being too friendly, in this sense, unintentionally lowers your perceived worth. In social dynamics, people often place more value on what is rare or earned. When you make yourself constantly accessible and agreeable, your time, attention, and energy start to seem less important, not just to others, but eventually to yourself. You begin to question why you feel unappreciated or exhausted, when in reality, you've allowed others to overlook the effort you put in, because they never had to work for it. It's important to recognize that being taken for granted isn't just about others' behavior. It's also about the signals we send. When we never say no, when we always smile and accommodate without expressing limits, we teach others that our comfort and priorities are secondary. And once that pattern sets in, it's very difficult to undo without conflict or withdrawal. When you're excessively friendly, it can become difficult for others to distinguish where the boundaries lie between kindness and compliance. Friendliness is generally seen as a positive trait. It's associated with warmth, openness, and good social manners. However, when taken to an extreme or offered indiscriminately, that friendliness can confuse people about your true intentions, needs, and limits. In the absence of clear boundaries, some may interpret your friendliness not as a sign of mutual respect, but as an invitation to overstep, manipulate, or control. Respect in any relationship, personal or professional, requires a degree of distance, a clear understanding that both individuals have autonomy, values, and expectations. But when you're always smiling, always agreeing, always avoiding confrontation to keep the peace or please others, people may start seeing you not as a peer, but as someone who can be persuaded easily, or even controlled. You may find your opinions being dismissed, your contributions undervalued, and your voice drowned out by louder, more assertive personalities. What's worse is that this misinterpretation often goes unchecked. People who blur the lines between friendliness and submissiveness don't always realize they're doing it, and those on the receiving end may not have any malicious intent. But regardless of intent, the effect is the same. Your friendliness is mistaken for a lack of strength or conviction. In social and work environments especially, this can be damaging. Instead of being respected as someone who is kind and capable, you're seen as someone who is kind because you're incapable of saying no, voicing disagreement, or pushing back when necessary. This creates an unbalanced dynamic. The more you allow others to rely on your friendliness without asserting your needs, the more they feel entitled to your time and energy. And because you're not openly setting boundaries, you're complicit, perhaps unintentionally, in letting this behavior continue. Over time, this blurring of lines not only erodes your self-worth, but also teaches others that your friendliness comes with no expectations, no standards, and no requirement for mutual respect. When you're overly focused on being friendly, there's a high chance you'll begin compromising your own needs without even realizing it. It often starts with small sacrifices, skipping a break to help a colleague, staying late to assist a friend, agreeing to something you're not comfortable with just to avoid seeming rude or uncooperative. These moments may feel harmless, even noble, but over time they build a dangerous pattern, a pattern of placing other people's priorities above your own. The desire to be liked or accepted can subtly manipulate your decision-making. You find yourself saying yes when your inner voice is screaming no. You stay quiet when you disagree, smile when you're upset, and offer support, even when you're mentally and emotionally drained. In trying to preserve peace and harmony, you chip away at your own identity, your own voice. This habit becomes especially dangerous because it's often celebrated. People praise your kindness, your patience, your willingness to go the extra mile, but rarely do they stop to ask at what cost. Constantly putting others first may seem generous, but it can lead to chronic self-neglect. You begin to overlook your own goals, delay your own plans, or downplay your feelings so that others remain comfortable. Your emotional bandwidth shrinks, but you keep giving. Your time disappears, but you keep showing up. Slowly, the version of yourself that had dreams, preferences, and boundaries becomes hard to recognize. Even more troubling is the internal conflict this creates. Deep down, you might feel resentment, fatigue, or emptiness. You might start questioning why people don't show up for you the same way you show up for them. But the truth is, they've grown used to the version of you that always accommodates, always adjusts, always sacrifices. And because you've trained yourself to be agreeable at all costs, even expressing frustration feels unnatural, like you're betraying the image you've worked so hard to maintain. This imbalance isn't just emotionally draining, it's deeply unfair to yourself. You have every right to make your needs known, to protect your well-being, and to prioritize your own growth. Being friendly doesn't mean surrendering your own life to serve everyone else's. When you let your friendliness override your own needs, you not only harm yourself, but also enable others to see you as someone whose needs never come first. One of the hidden dangers of being too friendly is that it often leads you to extend trust too quickly, and not everyone is worthy of that trust. Friendliness, by its nature, involves openness. It means engaging with people in a positive, welcoming way, sometimes even being vulnerable or generous right from the beginning. While that can foster great connections with the right people, it also makes you susceptible to those who see your openness not as a strength, but as a weakness they can exploit. In reality, trust is something that should be earned over time, through consistency, respect, and mutual effort. But when you're too eager to be liked, to fit in, or to avoid conflict, you might find yourself trusting others too easily, sharing personal information, extending favors, or offering your time and energy to people you barely know. In doing so, you may unintentionally invite people into your life who are not concerned with your well-being, who see your friendliness as an opportunity to manipulate, use, or control you. This is especially true in environments where competition, self-interest, or hidden motives are common, like workplaces, social circles with status dynamics, or even romantic situations. People may pretend to befriend you, compliment you, or seek your help, not because they genuinely care, but because they know you're unlikely to say no. They may extract emotional support, confidential details, or practical assistance from you, without giving anything meaningful in return. And because you've built a reputation for being kind and available, you might hesitate to call it out when it happens. What's more, this misplaced trust can damage your self-esteem. When people betray you, ghost you, or use you, and then disappear, it's easy to turn the blame inward. You might wonder what you did wrong, or why people keep taking advantage of your good nature. But the issue isn't with your kindness, it's with the lack of discernment in how and to whom you give your trust. There's a critical difference between being friendly and being unguarded. The first is a healthy social trait, the second is a vulnerability. Just as you wouldn't leave your home unlocked in a neighborhood full of strangers, you shouldn't leave your emotional boundaries wide open to anyone who smiles at you. People reveal who they are through their actions over time, not through first impressions or surface-level charm. Being friendly should never mean offering someone full access to your inner world before they've demonstrated they're worthy of it. Many people fall into the trap of thinking that being friendly is the same as being effective in relationships or social situations, but friendliness, no matter how sincere, is not a substitute for assertiveness. In fact, when friendliness is used to avoid difficult conversations, sidestep confrontation, or mask discomfort, it stops being a virtue and becomes a defense mechanism. It allows others to assume you're fine with everything, even when you're not. Assertiveness is the ability to express your thoughts, needs, and boundaries clearly and respectfully. It's not about being rude, aggressive, or cold. It's about being honest and direct, even when it's uncomfortable. Friendliness, on the other hand, often leans toward accommodation. It can involve softening your words to avoid offending someone, going along with plans you disagree with, or holding back criticism because you don't want to upset others. When friendliness is your only mode of communication, you risk sacrificing clarity for comfort. Over time, this pattern can be damaging, not only to you, but to your relationships as well. People may assume you're always okay with how things are going. They won't see your silence as restraint, they'll see it as agreement. You might start to resent them for crossing lines they didn't know existed, but they won't understand what they did wrong, because you never said anything. The result is a disconnect. On the outside, you seem easygoing and supportive. On the inside, you're frustrated and overwhelmed. This is where assertiveness becomes essential. Being assertive means you can still be friendly, but with boundaries. You can smile and say no. You can disagree without being disagreeable. You can offer support without becoming a doormat. Assertiveness allows you to navigate situations with integrity, making space for both your kindness and your truth. It prevents misunderstandings, builds mutual respect, and protects your energy from being drained by the demands of others. It's also important to recognize that being too friendly in the absence of assertiveness can unintentionally teach others how to treat you. If you never correct someone, they assume they're doing the right thing. If you always give in, they expect that you always will. In this way, people begin to respond more to the role you play than the person you are. They adjust their behavior not to your needs, but to the version of yourself you present, one that's agreeable, compliant, and easy to manage. The goal isn't to stop being friendly, the goal is to balance that friendliness with strength. Assertiveness is the foundation that supports healthy relationships and personal well-being. Without it, even the most well-intentioned friendliness can lead to misunderstandings, resentment, and the erosion of your self-respect. In professional environments, being overly friendly can often backfire and diminish your authority, even if that wasn't your intention. It's natural to want to build rapport with colleagues and superiors, and being friendly can make you seem approachable, open, and cooperative. However, when friendliness crosses the line into excessive agreeableness or people-pleasing, it can undermine the respect others have for you, and erode your professional presence. At work, your authority is built, not just on your knowledge or skills, but on how others perceive your leadership, decision-making, and ability to assert your position when necessary. If you're always the one to compromise, always the one who says yes to additional tasks or unwarranted requests, people may start to see you as someone who is easily manipulated or too eager to please. This perception can drastically lower your professional standing and make it harder to command the respect you deserve, especially when it comes to situations that require decisiveness, strength, or clarity. In a team setting, if you are constantly friendly but never assert your opinions or challenge ideas when necessary, your voice may get lost. Over time, colleagues may stop looking to you for guidance or leadership, assuming that you're just another yes person who will go along with whatever is suggested. This can be especially damaging in leadership roles, where your ability to give direction and make tough decisions is crucial. If you appear too friendly and accommodating, your team might not take you seriously, and your authority will be compromised. Additionally, excessive friendliness in the workplace can blur the lines between personal and professional relationships. While it's important to be personable and maintain good working relationships, being overly friendly with colleagues can lead to the erosion of boundaries. When you engage in too many personal interactions, share too much personal information, or get too caught up in office social dynamics, you risk losing the necessary professional distance that helps you maintain your objectivity and decision-making abilities. Colleagues might start to feel that they can treat you like one of the group, losing the professional respect that typically comes with hierarchy or expertise. This can also have a ripple effect on your ability to manage conflict. In workplaces, there will always be situations that require you to give feedback, address issues, or make tough calls. If you've cultivated an image of someone who is overly friendly and accommodating, others may interpret your feedback as weak or insincere. Even when your intentions are to help or improve the situation, they may view your efforts to correct or guide as a personal affront, rather than a professional opportunity for growth. As a result, you may struggle to gain the buy-in or cooperation you need when addressing challenges or leading initiatives. Moreover, when your professional identity is dominated by your friendliness, others may mistake your cooperation for a lack of confidence in your abilities. They may start assuming that you don't have the conviction to stand firm, even on important issues. This perception can lead to missed opportunities for advancement, as decision-makers might overlook you for promotions or leadership roles, in favor of someone they perceive as more assertive, decisive, and capable of taking charge. The key here is balance. While being friendly can help foster a positive work environment and create good relationships, it's essential to maintain professional boundaries that reflect your leadership capabilities, expertise, and ability to make decisions. Without a balance between warmth and assertiveness, your professional authority can be easily compromised. Setting boundaries is not just a way to protect your time and energy, it is fundamentally a form of self-respect. When you establish clear boundaries, you are communicating to others that you value yourself enough to prioritize your own needs, well-being, and personal space. Boundaries are not walls that isolate you from others, rather they are healthy guidelines that define how you engage with the world around you. They help maintain balance in your relationships, whether they are personal, professional, or social, and ensure that you are not overwhelmed or manipulated by external demands. Without boundaries, you are at risk of becoming a vessel for everyone else's needs, desires, and expectations. If you constantly say yes to others, and never take the time to reflect on your own needs, you send the message that your time is less important than theirs, that your feelings are secondary, and that your well-being is not a priority. Over time, this erosion of self-respect can leave you feeling depleted, resentful, and emotionally drained. The more you ignore your own needs in favor of accommodating others, the more you lose touch with what makes you unique, your passions, desires, and personal goals. Boundaries are not just about protecting your physical space, but also your emotional, mental, and psychological well-being. When you are constantly friendly and overly accommodating, you may allow people to cross personal lines without realizing it. Whether it's a colleague asking for too much of your time, a friend expecting emotional support without offering reciprocity, or a family member demanding more from you than you can give, every violation of your personal space chips away at your sense of self. It's important to remember that you have the right to say no to things that don't align with your values, your goals, or your capacity to give. Setting boundaries can sometimes feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to being the person who always says yes, the one who always lends a hand, the one who goes along with everything to avoid confrontation. However, the discomfort you feel when you assert your boundaries is often a sign that you are taking back control of your life and reinforcing your self-respect. Over time, the discomfort will lessen, and you will find that others not only respect your boundaries, but also respect you more deeply for establishing them in the first place. People who care about you will understand that healthy boundaries benefit everyone involved. They create a more sustainable, respectful dynamic, where each person's needs are considered and balanced. In fact, setting boundaries is not just an act of self-respect, it's an act of respect toward others as well. When you allow others to overstep your boundaries, or take advantage of your kindness, you are not helping them, you are enabling unhealthy patterns of behavior that could ultimately harm them. By setting limits, you create a space where mutual respect can thrive, and where both you and others can engage in relationships that are supportive, nurturing, and fulfilling. Boundaries also provide emotional clarity. When you are constantly bending to others' expectations or needs, it becomes difficult to recognize your own emotional signals. You may ignore your stress, anxiety, or frustration because you're so focused on keeping others happy. By setting boundaries, you make space for self-awareness and emotional health. You become more attuned to your needs, whether it's a need for rest, time alone, or a break from social interactions. This clarity helps you make better decisions and maintain a healthier balance in your life. Furthermore, boundaries give you the opportunity to nurture your relationships in a way that is authentic and fulfilling. When you honor your own needs, you are better equipped to offer meaningful support to others. If you're running on empty because you've been too accommodating, you won't have the energy, emotional capacity, or mental clarity to be truly present for the people who matter most. Setting boundaries allows you to give from a place of abundance, not depletion. It ensures that your connections with others are based on mutual respect and genuine care, not obligation or resentment. Ultimately, boundaries help you retain your integrity. They are a statement of who you are and what you stand for, and they ensure that you can live in alignment with your values and priorities. When you set boundaries, you honor yourself, you protect your peace, your time, and your mental health. In doing so, you set a powerful example for others about how to navigate relationships with respect, understanding, and self-awareness. In any meaningful relationship, whether personal, romantic, familial, or professional, mutual respect is the cornerstone of long-term success and fulfillment. True relationships, those that are based on trust, care, and understanding, inherently respect limits. This respect for boundaries is not a sign of distance or emotional coldness, rather it's a sign of deep regard for the individual and their needs, their space, and their well-being. When you set boundaries and communicate your limits clearly, you are providing a blueprint for others on how to engage with you in a healthy, constructive way. True friends, partners, and colleagues will appreciate and honor these limits, understanding that they are necessary for preserving your sense of self and maintaining the integrity of the relationship. They recognize that boundaries are not an obstacle to connection, instead they are a framework that ensures both parties feel valued, heard, and respected. This dynamic is especially important when it comes to emotional boundaries. In relationships
relationships, where people push their emotional needs onto you, without considering your own emotional health, the connection becomes unbalanced. Individuals communicate openly about what they need, how they feel, and what they're capable of giving, at any given moment. There's an understanding that everyone has limits, and that these limits are to be respected for the relationship to thrive. This principle of respecting limits extends beyond just emotional needs. It applies to all aspects of a relationship, including time, energy, physical space, and even intellectual boundaries. For example, in a professional environment, when your colleagues understand that you can't always take on additional projects, or that you need time for focused work, they'll respect your need for quiet time or breaks. Likewise, in personal relationships, when you communicate that you need some time for yourself, the people who truly care about you will recognize that this is not a rejection, but rather an opportunity for you to recharge and be present in a healthier way when you're together. Boundaries in relationships are also about creating a space where both individuals can be their authentic selves, without fear of judgment or manipulation. When you have healthy boundaries, you are able to express your thoughts, desires, and needs, without feeling the need to justify them or seek approval. You can be honest about what works for you and what doesn't, and this authenticity creates a foundation of trust that strengthens the relationship. People who truly value and respect you won't pressure you to abandon your limits or compromise your values to fit their expectations. Instead, they'll celebrate the fact that you are strong enough to assert your needs and healthy enough to protect your well-being. On the flip side, when you ignore your own limits and allow others to trample over your boundaries, you send a message that your needs are secondary, that you are willing to sacrifice your well-being for the sake of keeping the peace or maintaining the relationship. This behavior often leads to feelings of resentment, burnout, and emotional exhaustion, as you continue to give without receiving the same consideration in return. A relationship built on a lack of boundaries creates an unbalanced dynamic, where one person's needs are constantly prioritized over the others, leading to eventual dissatisfaction and conflict. True relationships, however, recognize that love, care, and respect go both ways. They acknowledge that everyone has personal limits, and that those limits are not signs of weakness or selfishness, but of self-awareness and strength. In fact, relationships that don't respect limits are often relationships built on unhealthy dependencies, manipulation, or an imbalanced power dynamic. In these situations, one person may try to dominate or control the other, using their disregard for boundaries as a tool to gain leverage or avoid responsibility. This is where toxicity can creep in, when one person's inability or unwillingness to set boundaries allows the other to exploit the relationship for their own gain. Healthy, thriving relationships operate within the framework of mutual respect for each other's limits. When you respect another person's boundaries, you not only protect them from overextension and emotional harm, but you also demonstrate your appreciation for their individuality and autonomy. Likewise, when others respect your boundaries, they reinforce the fact that they see you as a whole person, worthy of honor and care, not just someone to fulfill their needs or meet their demands. A critical aspect of personal growth and healthy boundaries is recognizing that your self-worth is not dependent on the opinions of others. In a world where social validation is so easily accessible, whether through likes on social media, compliments in person, or praise at work, it's easy to fall into the trap of tying your value to how others perceive you. This can be especially true for those who tend to be overly friendly, as they often seek to be liked and accepted by everyone they encounter. The desire for external validation can create a dangerous cycle, where your sense of self fluctuates based on the approval or disapproval of others. However, when you place your worth in the hands of others, you surrender control over your own identity. You allow external factors, often beyond your control, to dictate how you feel about yourself. This reliance on others' opinions can create a fragile sense of self-esteem, one that is vulnerable to criticism, rejection, or even just a lack of acknowledgement. When you define yourself based on others' perceptions, you give away your power. Every compliment becomes a lifeline, and every criticism feels like an attack on your very being. This results in a life lived according to the whims of those around you, rather than one that reflects your own truths. Being overly concerned with how others perceive you can prevent you from making authentic choices, or from pursuing your own path. Instead of living in alignment with your own values, you may end up being a chameleon, adapting to whatever environment you find yourself in, just to fit in and gain approval. True self-worth is built on an internal foundation, not on the shifting sands of other people's judgments. When you understand and believe in your own value, regardless of others' opinions, you liberate yourself from the constant pressure to please and perform. You become less susceptible to external validation, and more attuned to your own needs, desires, and capabilities. Your self-worth is no longer a reflection of others' perceptions, but of your own understanding of who you are and what you bring to the world. This is why it is so important to cultivate self-awareness and self-acceptance. By developing a deep sense of your own identity and worth, you become more grounded in your decisions, your relationships, and your actions. You no longer need to constantly seek external approval, because you already know your own value. Your confidence doesn't hinge on whether people like you, agree with you, or admire you. Instead, it is rooted in the knowledge that you are enough just as you are, regardless of what others may think or say. Furthermore, the more you detach your self-worth from the opinions of others, the more you empower yourself to make choices that reflect your true self. You're able to speak your mind, stand your ground, and take action based on what aligns with your own principles and goals, not what others expect or desire from you. This shift in perspective can profoundly change the way you interact with the world. You no longer seek validation through friendliness or approval-seeking behavior. You seek connection, genuine engagement, and respect, because you already know that you are worthy of those things, regardless of external praise or acknowledgement. It is also important to note that not everyone will like you, agree with you, or see you in the same way, and that's okay. The goal is not to please everyone, but to find those relationships and interactions that are mutually respectful and authentic. People who truly respect you and your boundaries will recognize your worth, independent of whether or not you're constantly friendly or accommodating. In fact, setting healthy boundaries and standing firm in your self-worth often attracts more genuine, fulfilling relationships, as you will naturally gravitate toward people who appreciate you for who you are, not for the role you play in their lives. When you stop depending on others' opinions for your self-worth, you also open yourself up to growth. You're no longer trapped by the need for external validation, so you can focus on what really matters to you, your own personal development, your passions, and your long-term goals. You can take risks, try new things, and pursue your dreams, without the fear of judgment or rejection holding you back. Your confidence comes from within, making it more resilient and sustainable over time. Thank you.